The Indian government today told the Supreme Court that Rohingya Muslims are a security risk. Some of them are linked to Pakistan-based terrorist organizations, and India is under no international compulsion to take them in. In fact, the government has defended its move to deport the 40,000 odd Rohingyas in India right now. The government's affidavit in the Supreme Court comes at a time when over 400,000 Rohingya Muslims are escaping Myanmar from action that the United Nations Human Rights Chief describes as a textbook case of ethnic cleansing. So is India right in turning its back on the Rohingyas? Is the government justified in its stance? To talk about this issue, I'm joined today by former Attorney General of India, Mukul Rohatgi, Senior Advocate Aryama Sundaram, and Senior Advocate Sanjay, Hegde, both of course of the Supreme Court. We're hoping to get different legal viewpoints on an issue which is becoming very contentious. Welcome to this conversation. Mr. Aryama Sundaram, first I will come to you. The government says that Rohingyas are a national security risk. Is it fair to target or to paint all of them with the same brush? There may be some who could be a security risk, but to say that all of these refugees could be a potential risk, do you find that fair?
Look, this is not an answer which you can just give offhand. The fact of the matter is there are too many issues at stake. Number one, without a doubt, whether you're a citizen of India or not, you have your right under Article 21. That is true. Again, a question of national security is of tremendous importance. The third thing is, there is a difference between deporting people who are already in the country and stopping people from coming in. There is a difference there. Now, we have a very piquant situation. We are talking not about preventing people from coming in, because if we want to prevent people from coming in, the government feels there's a good enough reason to prevent them. It can always be prevented. It cannot be stopped. We are dealing with a situation of people who are already in whom we want to deport. Now, there, you are right to this limited extent that yes, if you are saying that people are involved in drug smuggling or people are involved in crimes of a different nature, then it would be only right to pinpoint the nature of people, the kind of people, and you deport them and not others. However, when you're dealing with an issue of terrorism, the problem is it's even in proportionality. What do? You say, all right, the Rohingyas are there, a substantial number of them are apparently, according to the government affidavit, that's yet to be seen, are involved in terror activities. Now, you can't sit and pinpoint and say Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z are the ones, the rest are not. Because why? The consequences are tremendous. The consequences of even one of them involving himself in terror activities are tremendous. And therefore, the yardstick would be different. And so this is not a question which normally you would say, look, no government should deport people who are running away, who are political refugees or who are victims of ethnic cleansing. No government should turn them away. But when the government has information, has intelligence information, that many people who have come in like this are involved with terror groups, and if this information is really true, we are going today on what the government affidavit says, then I think it puts a different perspective to the whole thing. And I don't think it's so easy to deal with it as saying, should India turn their backs? It's not that simple an issue.
All right. So, in fact,
going to a much more vexed area.
In the government affidavit, it is said that there is substantial proof. They don't say all or how many or a few of these Rohingyas could have terrorist links, and they say that they will place this information only before the Supreme Court and not in public view. I have Sanjay Hegde with me as well, and the argument that the government puts forward, Mr. Hegde, is that India is not bound to take in refugees, and India is not bound to not send them back if the need be, not by any international convention.
India has had a long history of accommodating refugees, whether it was the Bangladeshi refugees in 1971 or the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees in the 1980s. In fact, a lot of India's current leaders have themselves been refugees from what was erstwhile India after partition. We are a country of various kinds of people who have come in from various points of time, we have rarely closed the doors. This is the first time we have said, no, we are not going to take these people because we suspect that some of them are terrorists. Now, the government may have reason for it, the government may not have reason for it, or it may be a bald assertion on an affidavit. They say they have some material which they will place before the court in a sealed cover. It is for the court to assess that. But the normal international law is that when a man is fleeing from a country where there is trouble, you don't send him back to the same country to face the same trouble. You can, of course, take the person in, sequester him, wait for the troubles to end, and send him back. But in the meanwhile, that person is entitled under international humanitarian law to some guarantee of life and safety. The government may well be within its rights to say that, no, I expect that some of these people have terrorist links. Please exclude exclude the males if you want, but women, children, old people who are coming across the borders, who are being carried across the borders.
Okay.
Those people, you can't touch everybody with the same brush. National security is no magic mantra which tells courts, please stay off, this is our domain. Courts are entitled to know. And I'm sure that the courts will look at whatever material that is being provided very closely.
Okay, former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi is also joining us on this debate, and I'm interested in knowing your views, especially in light of what Mr. Hegde suggests, that, okay, let's keep the women and children if we think that there could be a terror threat in other spheres. And also the question about what kind of a nation India is and what kind of a nation we think, we are and how the world sees us. Do you think all of those arguments count?
Well, let me tell you, I've heard what both the panelists have said, and I don't agree with either of them. Firstly, this is a matter of foreign policy as to which refugees should come in, which immigration should happen or should not happen. Matters of foreign policy cannot be subject to judicial review. No court can decide whether we should take a refugee or we should expel somebody who is a foreigner, number one. Number two, it's also outside the pale of judicial review to decide whether we should have diplomatic relations with A country or B country, whether we should have a high commissioner or whether we should have only a consular officer. That's the first thing. So I don't think the court should entertain such a petition. The petition is completely misconceived. It may be based on sympathetic views, but it's completely misconceived. That's the first thing. Second, do you think we don't have enough people in this country that we should accept a large number of people coming from other countries? Look at around the world. America has stopped immigration. The European countries accepted immigrants in the Syrian issue. Now they have also stopped. The government of India is entitled in its wisdom to say that we want to close our borders. We don't want more people. Look at what has happened in Assam. The entire demographic picture of that state and the neighboring states has been completely changed. Now, Bangladeshis came in, they have had children. Very, very piquant issues have arisen as to what are the rights of those children. What are the rights of the parents? Whether they will have government jobs, whether they can be citizens. So this is completely a matter of foreign policy. And it is not for me or you to debate whether a woman or a child should be allowed or should not be allowed. That's really the question. And more so, if the government of India says that we don't want them, actually that should be the end of it. Nothing more. But on top of that, the government of India has also said that these are, large security risks. And we have troubles on the northeast, we have troubles in the north. The security of the nation is at risk.
Right.
Is it possible to say that these 5, 20 or 100 people may be involved, so we will have to pick them out and we will not allow them but allow others? I'm sorry, this cannot be done. And this debate should end with saying that if government of India has taken a call on foreign policy And if there is material to buttress that position, though no material is required, but since the matter is in court, the government may put the material. But in my view, matters of foreign policy are completely no-no, and the court should not touch it with a barge pole. I fully endorse the view of the government of India.
Sure. And of course, that's the government's argument as well, that it's not in the court's jurisdiction to decide its policy, though should the people of the country say the government said so and that's the end of it? I'm sure we're open to debate, and that's the beauty of a democracy. Comments coming in from Sanjay Hegde and Aryama Sundaram. I'm going to go to Sanjay Hegde first because he has the counter view. Just on that point, is it in the court's jurisdiction to decide what a nation's foreign policy should be? And just the point that Mr. Rohatgi makes about don't we have enough people here? Because the government says in its affidavit as well that its first job is to give resources to its citizens and not to outsiders. So we have to take care of our own first.
It's not a binary situation that you can't take care of your own and you can't before taking care of the others. This is a situation where people in trouble are coming to you. If they are turned out, they go to certain death. Indian Constitution has given everyone a right to life. If you want to take away that right to life, you have to do it legally. Now, you must remember that throughout the world there have been these refugee crises, and at various points of time, various countries have dealt with them differently. You must remember that India itself accepted quite a few thousands of Tibetan refugees. The only thing that I would say is that please do not discriminate between refugees based upon what you perceive their religious beliefs are. I agree with the fact that that you may have security concerns, but those security concerns can be adequately met if you sequester them. Sequester them till the troubles die and then send them back. You are under no obligation to keep them forever and ever. But when you see a man running away from a fire, you as a country can't push the man back into the fire. That is not international law. That is not the India that we know.
Okay. Aryama Sundaram, just on the point that even Mukul Rohatgi made out of Europe now, Angela Merkel was the one, head of state who stood out in the face of all of that pressure when it came to Syrian refugees and said, yes, we will take them in. Our neighbor, Bangladesh, is a smaller country. And Sheikh Hasina has taken in 7 lakh refugees and put them in refugee camps. So over and above whether it is the court's business to decide India's foreign policy or not, and of course that is the affidavit the government has put in, what kind of a people are we? Does that question come into play today?
Look, I don't think there is any manner of doubt that India has always been a hospitable country to people who are in need. As poor as we are, we have been hospitable. In this case, it's not a mere question of foreign policy. I heard what Mr. Rohatgi said, and to this extent I disagree with him. That is that it's not a pure matter of foreign policy because these people who are already in India are people who by our constitution have been given a right under Article 21 of our constitution of life and liberty. Therefore, to say that the court has absolutely no jurisdiction may not be correct, because the court can definitely go into that question because a fundamental rights violation is being alleged to see whether the government has material to come to a conclusion. The court cannot, in my view, go into a question whether the material is sufficient or insufficient. But the court can say, has the government got a justification which satisfies the government that they should not allow these people in because of a security threat? That is all that the court will look at and no more. I don't believe that the court would look into, in matters like this, would look into questions as to whether what is the material you got, is that sufficient, is there not another view possible, etc. And there I agree with Mr. Rohatgi, this is a executive decision, and that executive decision is not lightly interfered with. It's not as though it's the Supreme Court will act as an appellate court. But at the same time, we must keep in mind that our security concerns are really overriding. And if the government has material, and I'm not talking about the sufficiency of material, I'm talking about the existence of material to show that it's a security threat, I believe that the government, acting the way it has, can be said to be reasonable.
Mr. Rohatgi, if these 40,000 Rohingyas were to be deported, where would we send them? It's not like Myanmar is taking them back.
Now listen, as far as the ones coming in are concerned, they are certainly required to be stopped, and no part of the Indian Constitution will give any right to somebody who wants to come through our borders. So that's one issue. The second issue is that there are people already in this country. If they have come in illegally, they still remain illegal aliens. They still remain not citizens of this country. And if a wholesome view is taken by the government by deciding all the pros and cons that this deportation must take place, well then it ought to take place. So, I mean, there's no real, to say, see, for individuals I can understand that some individual is taken in or not, or is not allowed to go out or something is one issue. But if you have thousands of people, they have to be deported back to their country. Where else will they be deported? And, if you start accepting people from, we have troubled borders, we have so many nations, so many people have already come in. Put a stop to it sometime.
Okay.
And I think this is the right time that, one puts a stop to this kind of thing.
One needs to check whether Myanmar is actually going to take back any Rohingyas at all. But Sanjay Hegde, I'll leave you with the last comment on this. I've been told I don't have Sanjay Hegde. But, the last bit, and if Aryama Sundaram, you want to come in on the last comment on this, that to say today that we can't sequester them or check whether they're safe or not and ad hoc remove them, will India need to qualify that further on an international stage?
Look, like I told you, it is a vexed question because while I feel that if they had not come into the country and there was a serious concern of the government that they would create a security risk if they came in, the government can say we are not going to take them in. But having come in, now how you deal with the question is also a great level of practicality. The fact of the matter is, if it's a security risk, then the government saying that we cannot have them staying here because it's a security risk can be said to be justified. At the same time, what Mr. Hegde was saying about sequestering them and keeping them is not really going to solve that security problem. So it's something which the government has to see objectively to see whether it is possible to identify a section of them as being security risks, and if that is so, to deport those people and keep others whom the government does not feel is a security risk. And that, I feel, is a possibility the government can look at. Whether they can do it successfully or not is a different issue. But I believe that in matters like this, if there are reasons of national security, they will come first.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Aryama Sundaram, Mukul, Rohatgi, and Sanjay Hegde there, top advocates giving their view on a subject which is now in the Supreme Court. The Government of India, of course, in its affidavit today, taking the position that nor is India under any compulsion to take in Rohingyas, but we can very well deport them as well because the Government of India sees them as a security threat.